you guys. Welcome back to another episode of Many Tribes, One Kingdom. It's your good buddy John here on this beautiful Tuesday morning, and we are joined, as always, by our good friend and co-host.
Hey, it's Dustin.
I like that intro. We came in really strong there. So today, I'm excited for this video. I really am. So when me and Dustin were sitting down and making the schedule at the beginning of the month, Dustin suggested that I should do a video on my blindness. And after a little bit of a conversation, we decided, people have tons of questions about blindness. So why not give them a chance to have those answered? So as you know, I've put out a poll on Facebook and you guys have voted on you guys have submitted questions to be asked. Dustin's going to ask me those questions now, and I'm going to answer them for you.
Just to begin with, I'm sorry if I butcher your name. By the way, we have permission to say the first name, so don't worry. We're not going to say anyone's last name on this video, but I just want to say I do apologize if I butcher your name. So first question, Arcadia asked, were you born blind?
All right. Well, starting off with an easy one. So thank you, Arcadia. Yes, I was born blind. The thing is, they didn't realize it till I was 7 months old, though. Until you reach that point, you can't be too sure. I have a condition called Leber's congenital amaurosis, which I'm not going to go into detail about that here, but if you want, look it up. So yes, I was born blind.
Okay, next question. Sydney asks, how long did it take you to learn the necessary skills needed to function?
All right, so that one's an interesting one because I actually learned them in phases. For instance, I learned how to read Braille by the time I was in third grade. I knew all that there was to know about Braille. Mm-hmm. And then I learned cane techniques off and on for a few years. And then I started learning, basic living skills. I learned how to cook and everything like that. So really there was no set time. It really depends on what your definition of skills needed to function are. And in some ways, I am still learning some of those skills. So I won't say that I'm a master at them yet.
He is a really good cook. I haven't tasted his cooking, but everybody keeps bragging about it. Bethany asks, what is your biggest frustration of living blind in the sighted world? And / do you use a cane or guide dog? So I guess answer the first question.
Okay. My biggest frustration. Okay. That's a hard one. I think my biggest frustration is that people really don't consider blind people too often. They either view us as not being capable, and that's really frustrating. It's also frustrating that we're not considered a lot when it comes to everything in public. There's not as much accessibility to Braille. There's not as much audio description as I feel there should be. And that is very frustrating. I feel like it's also frustrating that people don't educate their children on the matter a little more. I've had parents who hush their children when their child wants to ask me a question. And guys, I'm okay with kids asking me questions. I'm okay with anyone asking me questions. It's just being rude about it is what I don't like. And there's a difference.
So do you use a cane or a guide dog?
I actually use a cane. I have a smart cane. So it has a GPS in the handle. I can tell it where I want to go, and it'll give me precise directions to get me there.
So I'm going to give a little bit of input on this one because I've had this experience with him. If you have a question for John, ask John. Don't sit there and try to ask me. So if you have a question for a blind person or someone who's blind and someone else is, guiding them around, don't ask the guide. Ask the person. They're capable of answering a question. Please don't treat them as like a charity case.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That is a big pet peeve of mine. I've had people come up and ask my sighted friends questions about me, and my sighted friends have been like, "Well, just ask him," and they're like, we don't feel comfortable asking him." Well, then don't ask. Either ask me or don't ask.
Yes. So, how do you feel about music? Oh, sorry. Nicole asks, "How do you feel about music?"
I love music. I actually play a guitar for the church. I play a 12-string guitar. And I absolutely love music. My favorites are country, classic rock, and obviously Christian.
So she also asks, what impact does music have on your life?
It has a big impact, actually. Music is one of those things that I feel so connected with it. I don't need to be able to see it at all to enjoy it. There are some things that you have to kind of see to enjoy. And music is not one of those. I can just sit back, read a book, and have my Echo playing music for me, and I just love it.
So do you have like a story you want to share? This is not part of the question, but do you have a story of when you were learning something and somebody really made a big boo-boo?
Oh, I know which story you're referring to. This is related to music. So we have a friend in the Salvation Army who he was teaching a guitar class when I was at an event. And I was in there. I had my cane underneath my chair. And he came in. He never met me before. So he passed out sheet music and he put it on the music stand in front of us. And he asked everybody, he's like, all right, does everybody have their music? Now, I want to stress, he had never met me before. And I say the first thing that comes to my mind, I'm like, no. And this man looks straight at me. He's like, it's right there in front of you. What are you, blind or something? It was so funny. We love him. We have a good laugh about it.
Yeah, then you made him run a 2K with you.
I did. I got revenge. All right.
All right. So Rima asks, how do you observe different art forms, such as paintings or even visual entertainment, such as movies?
Oh, all right. Rima. Okay, good question. So unfortunately, some art forms are really limited for me. I can't enjoy paintings. I love the idea of paintings, but I myself can't enjoy them. That's not to say I'm not going to have some in my house when I get my own place, but I can't really enjoy them. If someone describes them to me, that's one thing. Movies, I can enjoy. There's a thing called audio description that you can, for instance, you can go on your Netflix and turn it on, or on your Disney Plus or whatever app you're using. Some of them don't have it, which is frustrating, but most of them do. And I believe there's a lot of DVDs that have it on there now too. You just got to go to the selections menu. It's under the languages. So I can enjoy those that way. It's very good for me. Now, when there isn't any, yes, I do have to have someone describe it to me. And that has almost led to some incidents in a movie theater because people were describing a movie to me and the people around me didn't realize I was blind, so they got mad. I mean, whoever's with me, they try to talk as quietly as they can, but obviously they still have to talk to let me know what's going on.
After you fed into the next question, does someone have to describe them to you? So you already answered that.
Yeah.
So what's your definition of beauty? That's still from Rima's questions.
Okay. My definition of beauty, well, that really depends. So if we're talking, what's your definition of beauty, say, not referring to people, I'd say nature. I love nature. I can enjoy it, with it has a good scent. It has a good sound to it. I love just going out in the woods, listening to the birds, smelling the wind and the breeze and the trees and the grasses and everything.
And the fire.
And fire. I love the smell of fire. That's true. I love to make campfires and just sit there and enjoy them. Now, if we are referring to people, if you're asking what's my definition of beauty when it comes to people, it's the inside. It has nothing to do with their physical appearance. I've met some people who could be considered very beautiful by physical standards, but who I view as very ugly people because they're very, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very attached to their appearance. I think their appearance gives them a leg up on other people. And then I've met other people who would be considered not beautiful, but who I believe are more beautiful than anyone because they have just such a winning personality.
So Destiny asks, do you believe that God heals? And if so, what are your thoughts on still having blindness, knowing that God could heal you of it if he chooses to?
All right. So first off, thank you, Destiny. That's a very good one. Yes, I do believe God still heals to this day. I know for a fact he does. Now, what are my thoughts on this? So I don't feel bitter or angry or anything like that. My thoughts are, if God chooses to heal me, he will. Since he hasn't, then there must be a reason. I have learned through my 23 years of life that I don't know everything, and that's okay. So I've learned to just submit to God in these instances. So if God hasn't healed me, that's not to say he won't do it. Maybe he'll do it tomorrow. Maybe there's a certain point he wants me to reach in life, and then he'll heal me. I don't know. I'm not God. I've learned to accept my role because I would be terrible as God. So I'll let the one who's qualified to be God, I'll let him be God, and I'll just be John.
Well put. Well put. So Anthony asked, how has your situation impacted your life? So I guess he was referring to your blindness.
Yes, yes. So that's a good one. It has impacted it has affected my life in a lot of ways. You know, my very personality is part of it is based on my blindness, I would say, because I've learned how to do things a certain way. And that's because I can do things this way and not that way. So I've learned to view the world differently. I've learned, for instance, one example I always give everybody. But when you go to walk into a room, you look around. Before we've already walked in that room, I've already listened and I've usually sniffed the air and I can tell you what's in that room before you can. So I would say my situation has impacted my life in some very positive ways. I've met some wonderful people. I've connected with some great people. So, yeah.
Macrina asks, how do you distinguish between foods?
Ooh, good one. Good one. So by their taste, honestly, and by their smell. So the annoying thing is that sometimes there's a smell that just puts me off of a food, and then I try it later on and I decide that I love it. For instance, I couldn't stand the smell of cooked broccoli when I was younger. My nose was much more sensitive as a child. And so I always wanted to try it and I just couldn't. I would get it this close to my mouth and then the smell I'd be like, nope, I can't do it. When I got older, I was like, I'm going to give this a try. My senses had kind of gotten a little bit better under control then. So I could try it and I love it. So I distinguish between foods by their taste, their smell, and their texture. I can grab a chicken leg and tell you this is a chicken leg, not a piece of pizza.
So the same person asks, what is your favorite food?
Ow, that's a hard one.
This man loves to eat.
Yeah. I can't. I've got a little bit of a belly. So that's a hard one. That really is. I love a lot of different foods. I love burgers. I love a nice, well-made cheeseburger. I love pie. I also love a lot of international foods. One of my favorites is sarmale. It's a Romanian dish. It's Romanian cabbage rolls. It's one of my favorites. I had it when I was over in Romania doing a mission trip in 2017. It's one of my favorites. Really, honestly, my favorite food is whatever mood I'm in at the time.
There you go. That's a good answer. That's how, I will agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
Angel asks, does your blindness drive you to encourage others in your situation?
Yes, absolutely. Because I've seen other people who are blind who they let it beat them down. They let it get to them. They let other people dictate to them how things should be for their lives. And I'm like, no, you can do so much more. You can do so much better. You don't have to let people make those decisions for you. So for me, yes, I absolutely use my blindness to encourage others in my situation, which is one of the reasons why we're actually making this video, not just to answer your questions, but I also want other people who are blind to see this video and know that, hey, we can do just as much as any sighted person.
Angel also asks, does not being able to see help you focus on someone's personality rather than their appearance? Well, I love that question.
I definitely think so. And that's not to say that someone who can see wouldn't focus on someone's personality. I've definitely met people who do. But I think because seeing is not an option for me, I have to focus on someone's personality. Like I explained earlier, I've met people who could be considered very ugly personality-wise, but who would be considered beautiful on the outside and vice versa.
Brendan asks, does it seem unfair to you that God allowed you to be blind?
No, it does not seem unfair to me. And I know he's got a follow-up question, so I'll save my next comment until after that.
Okay. How do you internally reconcile his goodness with your blindness?
Okay, here we go. Here's the one that it's going to take me a minute to answer. So I recognize that we are in a fallen world. Things are not how they should be. They're not the way God wants them to be. And that's a result of our sin and our rebellion. God didn't make me blind. I want to stress that. God did not decide that I was going to be blind in the sense that God was like, all right, I'm going to intentionally make John blind. Because of our sin, God allowed the consequences of that to affect us in all aspects of life, including our DNA. because my blindness is in my DNA. It's not because of an accident. So I recognize that God is still good, regardless of my circumstances. And the other thing that I want to kind of draw to, and this also kind of goes back to Destiny's question a little bit, is that while I recognize God could change the situation, what makes me so special? If God were to change my situation, then other people would ask, well, why doesn't he change mine? Why doesn't he change mine? And then the consequences of sin would just be non-existent. People wouldn't recognize that we're in a fallen world if God just sat there and made everything better. We have to recognize that we are a fallen race, and this enables me to recognize that God is good, and I will see one day. And I know that for a fact. Whether it's on this earth or in the next, I don't know. Part of me hopes I don't see in this world, because I want the first thing I see to be the face of Jesus.
I love that comment when I initially asked you that, what would you want to see if you got the ability to see again? You said, no, yeah. I want to see the beginning. Yeah. I just love your answer every time. So our last question, Josh asks, what is the biggest misconception the general public may have about people who are blind?
All right. Biggest misconception the general public has about us is that our limits. And what I mean by that is this. I've met people who are sighted who think, they think they need to protect me in a sense. They think they need to stop me from doing certain things, like lifting boxes, walking with carrying heavy boxes and stuff. People think they need to stop me from doing that. No, you don't. You don't know our limits. And the other thing is, just because one blind person can't do something doesn't mean all blind people can't do something. So, for instance, I'm not the best when it comes to social interactions. I'm not. I'm very awkward with it, but there are other blind people who are great at it. And that has nothing to do with our blindness and everything to do with our personality. And I do want to say this, and I meant to say this at the beginning before we started. I am not here speaking for all blind people. There are tons of blind people with different conditions, different circumstances, different scenarios, and their answers to these exact same questions may be very different from my own. My family always pushed me to do more. I remember my grandmother used to tell me this story about how when I was a baby and they just learned that I was going to be blind, my mom was afraid to let me walk on my own. And so my grandmother, one time, she took me and she placed me in the middle of the front yard, and she left me there and walked to the side, and she called me. And after, I cried for a little bit, I got up and walked right over to her. And so my family's always been good about pushing me to do more, pushing me to achieve more. My dad always taught me that there's nothing that a sighted person can do that I can't, besides the obvious. I can't go get my pilot license, unfortunately.
What was the first thing that popped into my mind when you said that?
Because you've known me for how long now? So again, your questions are great, and there will be different ones, obviously, but my biggest thing, and this is what I kind of want to leave you guys with, if you meet a blind person, don't assume that you know them, and don't assume you know what they can and can't do. There are tons of blind people who really will, given the chance, impress you very much. So I've been told that, and I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but I say that because people, for instance, I cook at the church. I take care of the children. I garden. I play music. I preach. Everything that a sighted person can do, I'm doing, except for driving. And that's really the truth there. I do archery. I shoot guns. I came in third place in a darts tournament with a bunch of other guys who could see. So don't assume that you know us. And that's the biggest misconception I think sighted people have. And the other misconception I think they have is that we're helpless. And that kind of goes back to they don't know us also. Because I've had sighted people tell me that I'm never going to live on my own. I'm never going to do anything on my own. And they're wrong. And I recognize that they're wrong. And sometimes they think they're doing it for our benefit, but you're not. Like, for instance, one of the most infuriating things you can do for me, and I will tell you flat out that you have infuriated me if you do this, is if you come up and take something out of my hand. Do not, and I repeat, do not do that, because that is a fast way for me to get very frustrated with you.
So I do have a funny story. This is when I first met John. This was at a men's camp. Salvation Army men's retreat. I want to say, what was it, 8 years ago? 8 or 9 years ago?
Something like that. I don't remember. It had to have been at least 7 years ago because remember, I didn't come back until 2015.
Oh, yes. 7 years ago. I want to say about 7 years ago. We were at a men's retreat, and so they had the normal, typical men's stuff. They had, games, sports, archery, shooting guns. So I'm walking down the big pathway where the shooting range was. I'm like, oh, I'll try out skeet. Was it skeet shooting?
No, it was rifle.
Rifle. And so I'm walking down there, and then all I hear was somebody yell, "The blind guy's got the gun." And without hesitation, I just turned myself around and ran my fat self right back up that hill. I was like, I ain't dealing with this today.
But and that's the thing. I know how to do guns. So
yeah, he does, and that was just like a really funny moment. I'm just like, every time I think about that, I'm like, wow, I was so wrong about that, but it's just like,
yeah,
just the initial reaction, I guess.
So I want to thank everybody for their questions. You guys asked some amazing questions, and I want to thank you all for participating in this. If you have any follow-up questions, I would love to make a part 2. So let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in. And if it is, then we'll make a part 2 sometime in the next couple months.
Yeah.
That's really all I've got.
All right. Well, there's another thing. You might see an interview for me coming up.
Ooh.
I don't know. See, ask me some questions.
Yeah.
But stay tuned for all of that. And God bless every single one of you during your walk with him today.